The area of our biome was divided into 4 main quadrants, each consisting of one tree and the surrounding dirt and plants. For the smaller organisms, such as the plants and insects, we used a smaller handmade quadrant. The quadrant was made up of a wire frame with knotted intersecting pieces of string. The string formed our smaller sectors inside the quadrant, which was about 10 inches by 15 inches, and each smaller square about 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches.
After periods of precipitation, the plants would be more likely to flourish, and during times of extreme sunlight, there would be a great amount of animal sightings. It was predicted that the hair barley population would be stable, the nutsedge population would fluctuate the most, the shepherd's purse population would be resistant to environmental change, the Argentine plant population would be greater in the afternoon rather than in the morning, the pocket gopher population would be extremely low throughout the entire investigation, and the triangulate cobweb spider population would be greater on hotter days.
The first organism that we observed was the nutsedge. Although this plant may look a lot like your ordinary grass, it is in fact a weed that is part of the sedge family. The leaves of the nutsedge are much thicker and form a distinct V shape. Nutsedge flowers can range anywhere between red, purple, and yellow, and have three-sided triangular stems. These weeds interact with their environment by depleting the nutrients and water from the soil, leaving less for the other plants and trees in the area. The second organism observed is the shepherd's purse. Its most identifiable feature is the heart-shaped pods that form at the tips of the plant that act as its seeds. Shepherd's purse has a similar role in our biome as the nutsedge, a weed. However, it also serves as a food source for the ants and can be eaten by animals in our area, such as squirrels and gophers. The third organism tracked in our biome is the Argentine ant. These ants are light or dark brown and can live in soil, under wood, or logs. This is why there has been an abundance of these ants on the trees and ground. The nests consist of many worker ants and several queen ants. These ants spread by sending out queen ants to establish a new colony elsewhere, while remaining in contact with the main nest. In this way, it creates a rapidly growing ant community. The Argentine ant is omnivorous, so it can eat just about anything, including the shepherd's purse and junk food found in our biome. The last plant population observed in our area is the hair barley. It is identified by the flowery spikes that act as the plant's seeds. The hair barley is considered a type of grass and is very tall. In our biome, it covers a large part of one of the tree quadrants and provides cover for many insects to dwell in. The triangulate cobweb spider is harmless in our biome. Like other spiders, it spins cobwebs to catch prey. These spiders are light brown with yellowing down the middle of the body and dark areas at the joints of their legs. The triangulate cobweb spiders are known to prey on a variety of organisms, even other spiders. In our biome, they prey on the Argentine ants by waiting for them to get stuck on a web, then using the hairs on their legs to envelop the ant in a cocoon. Once the prey is still, the spider will then approach it.
To counter organisms, we had to take different approaches. For the trees, they stayed at a constant number. It was also reasonable to say that the population of the gopher was 1, since sightings were few and far in between. The spiders were not as abundant and were in only a few locations, so they could be counted individually.
Let's move on to the data. When looking at our environment and our habitat, we were able to observe different trends and different characteristics that vary due to the environment and natural selection. The first is when observing the nutsedge, or the Cyperus esculentus. The morning and afternoon data did not vary as much, but as you can see, there wasn't any clear trend, but more of an up and down motion. This was one of the more popular organisms in our environment, and as you can see through the graph, even though there's a bit of fluctuation between morning and afternoon, when we looked at the habitat as a whole, we could clearly see that it was one of the dominating species. It is very important to the habitat, and as the data and trends shows, it was extremely constant. Whenever it disappeared in the morning or in the afternoon, the next morning or afternoon, there was always another organism to replace it, or the signs of more organisms there. Next, let's move on to the shepherd's purse, Capsella bursa pastoris. The morning and afternoon data did not vary much at all, and again, similar to nutsedge, whenever something happened in the morning, for example, an organism was missing due to human activity or natural processes, in the afternoon you could always see one come up after. The interactions between the environment and the plants in our habitat is very easy to spot by looking at this data. Next, let's look at the Argentine ant, also the most popular organism in our habitat. There was hordes and hordes of ants, and as you can see, the organisms per square feet for this organism is much larger than the others. The density is much higher. As you can see, the population density is pretty constant, and it was very abundant. It was impossible to count every single ant, so we had to do it per tree per quadrant. So that made it maybe underestimate and maybe not be able to see every single ant that was out there on any given day. So as you can see, due to the abundance of ants in the habitat, we were not able to count every single one, but about to get a nice estimation on what exactly was happening in terms of the ant interacting with the environment. Next, we can see the pocket gopher. The pocket gopher was a very rare sight. The couple times we did see a gopher is when it briefly stuck its head out of its hole, and that was a sight to behold. The human interactions make the gophers very timid and not very willing to approach humans. As you can see, the only days that we did see it, even there was mostly zeros for the organisms per square foot when we did observe the gopher. This is extremely crucial when looking at this habitat as a whole, as the gopher does not interact much when humans are around. And this is it's in a school, so there's lots of humans constantly around this environment. Next is another plant we observed called a hair barley. The hair barley is very abundant, but mysteriously one day we came and all of them were gone. This was probably due to some sort of human activity. This human activity showed us that the hair barley is always going to be able to reproduce and make enough organisms so that the habitat can survive. Finally, we have the triangulate cobweb spider. Mostly we saw webs, which we indicated was a sign that a spider was around. The most amazing thing about the triangulate cobweb spider was when the web disappeared in the morning, if we went back in the afternoon to the exact same place, we would always see a web that replaced it. This is because during that part of the day, it is very important for the spider to get enough nourishment and eat according to the weather. As we can see throughout the graphs, the interactions between population density and the environment are extremely relevant and show us a lot about how the habitat works and how the food chain works as well in the habitat.
This is the initial map of our biome. As you can see, each population is centered around specific areas because that is where their resources lie. Certain abiotic factors in our biome could be affecting populations, including the shirt and chip bag. In the final map of our biome, there's a heavy decrease in many of the organisms' populations. Because each population decreased, this suggests that the organisms in our biome depend on each other for survival. The changes can be attributed to the environmental changes such as precipitation and dry spells that occurred throughout our investigation.
When observing a species over time, one can see how behavior of an organism is developed, changed, and influenced by its environment and therefore natural selection. This means that a proximate and ultimate question should be put forth to evaluate and answer just how a certain behavior works. The proximate question asks how the behavior occurs and how it is modified. The ultimate question is why it happened the way it did when considering natural selection. Let's take the cobweb spider as an example. In our habitat, we observe the constant appearance of new webs every day, even though the day before, the cobwebs were destroyed by a certain human activity. The proximate question is, how did this behavior come to be? And the ultimate question, the thing we want to find out from observation, is why did it occur this way? The evidence is in our logs, where we can see the amount of spiders staying constant pretty much throughout the weeks of observations. But as carnivores, spiders need to eat. This process is essential to life and therefore will be selected for. Spiders who make webs every single day have a higher chance of catching food and getting nourishment, and advantageous trait that is selected for in the environment. Some spiders make extremely flimsy webs or don't make a web every day. As shown in the data, a new web appeared every time one wasn't seen during the day. This means that the spiders created new webs rapidly enough to take advantage of weather in which insects came out. Our observations in the field demonstrated how natural selection selected for the trait and why, answering the ultimate questions that because spiders need to eat throughout the day, they are able to swiftly make new webs even if their environment damages the nets constantly.